But now let's talk about our topic.
Boom.
For our extra turn. Teaching games. Matt and I, we've gotten complimented before for the way we teach games. That we tend to do a pretty good job of it. There is no bigger hurdle to getting people into this hobby than to teach. The best games, the games we like, we swim in the deeper end of the pool for the most part. We tend to like heavier games. There have been some people lately, Tom Vassell, really didn't gel with Food Chain Magnate. We had So Very Wrong About Games, didn't really gel with On Mars. We've had some people that were sort of looking into the deeper end of the pool and saying, no, I don't think so. I don't think the juice is worth the squeeze, basically, is what they were both saying.
Absolutely.
To some degree, teaching those games well and to get a person to a point where they can play what is an amazing game and to recognize it and to not feel overwhelmed by it is probably the biggest challenge that we have in the gaming hobby. So we're going to talk about some strategies, some tips, some things that we have found through painful, bitter experience to be the best way to teach games. Because we've both had disaster teaches.
Oh yeah.
And
I think my favorite disaster teach of yours, and it wasn't a bad one, was you and I are in Essen. It's late at night.
Very different story, but okay, go ahead.
Late at night.
Yeah.
And you pull out Wir sind das Volk. And 30 minutes in, you go, I'm too tired for this.
I can't do it. I can't
do this teach. And but we had spent maybe an hour even, probably more than that.
45 minutes at least.
And then 45 minutes of teaching, and you just looked at me and go, I can't do this.
Can't do it.
And I was just like, I love you. I get it. I totally get it. We've all been there. You're just like, this teach isn't going great. I'm not prepared enough for this teach. And I'm also way too tired for this teach. And I'm putting up the flag.
So there is on the scale of easy to hard teach.
Yeah.
The hardest teach in the world is I am at Essen. I have just bought a game. I have a fuzzy black and white printout of the English language description of the game. And while other people are popping out, pieces out of the cardboard, I am quickly skimming it
reading the rulebook
to try and to be able to 10 minutes later explain how to play a game that I have never played, never read the rules for, and never done. And that's about as hard as it gets.
I think, okay, so this is actually a good place to start. So before we get into how to teach, I think we should both talk about our worst teaching experiences ever. So I will tell mine.
Sure.
My worst teach ever was probably 6 years ago. And we had 2 new players to our group. This was, I believe, Jesse's first or second time ever playing with us. And it was our friend of the show, Ben Hoyt, had come to a game night. And I decided, so many mistakes were made here. I decided to play.
Ben and Jesse are difficult to teach to. Ben, in particular, is a difficult guy to teach to. He is, I don't know how to put it other than he seems to jump to conclusions too quickly.
And you got to hook him quick.
That's right.
You got to hook them quick.
Yes, exactly right.
Now, I decided a good game to teach them was Madeira.
Oh, boy.
Now, the reason this was a bad teach was 100% my fault, because I went, I'm dying to play Madeira. And I pulled out Madeira, and I realized I had completely forgotten how to play Madeira. And I had set it up. It took 20 minutes. They were excited. I was like, guys, you're going to love this. This is a genius game. It's brilliant. And I genuinely remember breaking out in cold sweats and having a bit of an anxiety attack as I looked at the rule book. And all of a sudden it was like in a cartoon where it all turns into a different language. And I was just like, I don't even remember the basic flow of a turn. It just left me. And I hadn't played the game in 6 months, and I just had utterly forgotten everything I could possibly know about the game. And I'm so sorry, guys. I think then we did a whole round, and halfway through the round, I just realized I'd completely forgotten a major rule of the whole game. Just you guys want to start over? And I just was they were very nice about it, but it was just one of those genuine, I was on stage having a panic attack, having to give a speech. And sometimes teaching games can feel like that. You are on the spot. You've got a bunch of people who have dedicated their night to this, and you better not blow it. And sometimes that pressure can be rough.
The first game I ever taught you was Battlestar Galactica.
Right.
at your house. I invited you over to my game night. And the very second game I ever introduced you to and ever taught you was Indonesia, the splatter.
Yeah. My eyes glazed over by the end of the word Indonesia.
I was 20 minutes in.
Yeah.
I was teaching it to you and 2 other people who had never played it before. And Trey was playing with us, and he had played it before. And I realized 20 minutes into the teach that I have seriously miscalculated.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the same thing, right? I really wanted to play Indonesia, but I also really wanted to show you Indonesia because you were just like a light went off in your head after Battlestar Galactica, and you were like, "Holy cow!" You were reading BGG, you were going, and you were just all in. And I forgot where you were at that stage, and I ruined it. And I was just like, oh.
And you know what? I wasn't ready for that game for another 6 or 7 years, probably.
Yeah,
which is crazy. Now, before we get into our prescriptive sort of rules for teaching, I think it's a good place to start with this. It doesn't matter how good of a teacher you are if you're teaching the wrong game to the wrong people.
Agreed. You cannot convert somebody into the type of gamer you want them to be.
And you cannot explain a game to somebody you cannot teach somebody how to run before they've learned to walk. You just can't.
Correct. You can, you can jump somebody up 1 level.
Yeah, you can't jump them 2 or 3.
2 levels, maybe you could do that, but too often the big problem in games is that you're trying to jump somebody 2 levels or even 3 levels, and it's just going to be a disaster no matter what you do.
I mean, and that's something that happens to people who are 5 years into the hobby, who have played a lot of games very quickly and have forgotten. Even like I remember something happened to me a few years ago where I was trying to teach my brother-in-law how to play a deck builder. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, all right, so it's standard deck building rules. You do, and like the concept of deck building was a language to him that he couldn't even fathom. And I was like, oh, I'm skipping over the deck. So no. You those go in your discard. Yeah, you don't get those. When do I get them? When you get through your whole deck? Well, what do I do? Like, I had forgotten that I even had to go through the like that was so basic to me.
Right.
Deck building.
How can anyone not know how to do
it goes in your discard
things?
When you buy them. What do you mean when I buy? Like, what is any of this?
Yesterday playing 1862. Jennifer was starting to go over some things. I had finished teaching, and we were talking strategy as we were playing the game. And Jennifer started to talk, well, yeah, but the way you could still get money in your company is you could just plow. And then she keeps on going.
All the shop talk.
And I'm just looking at Jennifer. I'm like, Jennifer, we need to explain what the word plow means in this context. And she's like, oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah. Because she's came from the knowledge base that, well, we're playing an 18XX. Clearly, these guys know what this term is and what that term is. It's absolutely true. The first thing we should talk about is there are learning styles, right? There's 2 different categories of it. There's one category that says there are 4 learning styles, and the word is VARK for visual, auditory, reading, writing, and kinetic, right? Or kinesthetic. The 7 category is visual, oral, verbal, physical, logical, social, and solitary, which is interesting. But we'll deal with VARK, though. We'll deal with visual, auditory, reading and writing, and kinetic. Okay, so kinesthetic is a person that has to do. A kinesthetic learner, my wife is a kinesthetic learner. Mm-hmm. She will be able to listen for about 10 minutes of rules explanation.
Right.
And after that, she's not getting anything. If we play a practice round, and I teach as we play the round, boom, she gets it all.
Right.
And she figures the game out. But I have to keep that in mind for her because she's extremely kinesthetic, and she's got to be doing in order to get it. And until then, she's not going to be able to keep those things in her head in an organized way. She has them. They're there somewhere. They're just not organized and not usable except in that way. Right? Other people, visual. For a visual learner, I want that player aid to be right in front of them. And as we're going over the rules, I'm pointing out, look here in the player aid and look at this. Because what they're doing is they're creating a link to what I'm saying to that part of the player aid, and they're going to be able to go right back there, and it's going to be an anchor for them. It's going to be sort of their read-write memory is going to be able to quickly access that piece of information because of that. Auditory learners are fantastic. That's what we hope for. Those are the easiest people to teach a game to, because that is, I could just read the rule book to you. I could just go over the game, and an auditory learner is going to be able to pick it up right away. They're just going to be able to listen to the rules that I'm laying out, and they're going to be able to do it. And then reading, writing learners. Matt and I are definitely reading, writing learners. That's one of our main strengths.
Yeah, I learn best just reading a rule book.
Exactly. Yeah. There's some people that they do best by going on the Geek and watching a teach of a game. Mm-hmm. I think Maddie and I probably do better just reading the rule book. In some cases, the rule book isn't enough, and it's a really great thing to have somebody out there that's willing to show how it goes.
If I need to learn a game to teach it the next day, I'll usually watch a video. Mm-hmm. And then read the rule book, because that's usually then especially if I've never laid it out on the table before me, I have to visually see it, and then if I read the rule book, and then I've had it after one video and one read through, I'm good to go.
I think I do it the other way around. I think I read first.
Oh, ideally I would do that. I'm just saying if I have to have a game taught by tonight and I've got 2 hours, I'll watch the video first and then I'll read the rule book.
Totally agree. Yes. Because there's always things that in the video they've left out, or that I wasn't paying attention close enough at that moment, and then when I read the rule book, I'm getting it. Yeah, I totally agree with that. So there was a person named Java for Short at the Rec Board Games Reddit, and they laid out what I think is a really good general order of teaching. They say that the first thing you do is you explain the high concept, right?
The hook.
Right. This is what the game is, right? It's one sentence. This is the fiction of the game. This is the tone of the game. This is what the game is about.
We are here,
right,
doing this.
Yes. In Gaia Project, we are several different alien species that are exploring and building our society up across the galaxy, and many of us are going to be building up our societies next to each other.
Yep.
Then the next thing is goals. What are the goals of the game? Paul did a really good job about, I would say about 5-7 years ago, something like that. He said, Tom, how do you win the game? And this was at minute 50 of a very tough teach.
Yep. That's my number one tip to people when they ask how to teach games is I say, hook, how do you win?
Yeah.
As long as you start there, usually the rest of the teach will go well. Hook them in, tell them the story, and then instantly go to, here is how you win. And often it'll just be, have the most victory points. But that's okay. People need to understand what we're playing for here.
Yeah. After Paul told me that, never happened again.
Yeah.
But when he pointed it out, I realized, you know what? Sometimes I miss that. Yeah. Sometimes previous to that, I would occasionally leave the goals out.
Yeah.
After goals comes the rules. Explain the rules and try to go from the most general to the most specific.
I would put one thing in between there.
Go for it.
I would add right after victory condition, I always like to go, what ends the game? I like to go, point. Here's how we win. You win by having the most victory points. The game will end at the end of round 8. Or the game will end when this pile is exhausted. I think it's very important to tell people how they're going to win and then what ends the game.
That's a good point.
I think, and those two pieces usually go together.
Yeah, I agree with that. With the rules explanation, we want to go from the most general to the most specific. The best way to explain that is on our turns, we're going to be taking these workers that you have in front of you, and you're going to be putting them out at those spaces on the board. And a lot of those spaces, look, when you put that there, you're going to get those things, and you're going to put those things in front of you, and that's going to help you out in that way. Start with that. Then later get into the, in these edge cases, you could put out more than one worker, or you could send somebody's worker back. I mean, that's the thing that you explain later on, right? After rules come exceptions. Okay, explain exceptions to the rules as late as possible and only if it's absolutely necessary. Sometimes we will get lost in all of the edge cases. We will get lost in war games. It's called Chrome.
Yeah.
Chrome are these tiny little rules that are there for historical accuracy or for this or the other thing. Even modern board games have a lot of Chrome in them. They have a lot of little rules that'll come up. Better to do that in a practice round, or better to do that as the game is playing. The really high level teach, what you're doing is you're explaining all the rules necessary to play round 1 of the game. then as you're playing round one of the game, the teacher is keeping an eye out for things that might be coming down the pike, and then they throw in that little extra. That's a really good key. And then last but not least, strategy. If at all possible, I think it's super important. And
Depends on the game, but if it's something like Dune, you gotta give everybody the basics.
I think you and I do a pretty good job of this, which is almost every time right before you start playing, because the majority of people playing a game for the first time feel overwhelmed. That's what they feel more than anything else, because they're trying to keep all these different things in their head at the same time without having ever done it once. And so to tell them in Railroad Evolution, for instance, like these are contracts. Fulfilling contracts is a huge way to get a lot of points in the game. Okay, that over there is another huge way to get points. Basically, you're going to be trying to figure out between these three things. In Concordia, we have here are several of the ways you can get the most points in the game. Here are the things that score points. Here are some of the combinations of those things that people go for. Right. And what it does is it gives people a filter through which to view the game.
Yep.
They can choose things that they're focusing on. So let's talk teaching strategy number one.
Just briefly, I just want to do a little amendment. So I agree with most of that. I had already written down my quick. I just want to go over my quick list of the things I do when I do it. So first, story, the hook. We're on the same page with that. Got to lead with the hook. Then I instantly go to the overall mechanism. Now, what I'm talking about here is this is how I teach games to gamers. Because it's a very different thing if I'm teaching it to people who don't play games.
Yes.
This is really the rules to when I'm teaching my game group, which I think is what most people listening are looking for.
Right.
If teaching a non-gamer is a completely different situation. You got to just set aside the day. But this is how I teach my group. I go for the hook. Then I go overall mechanism, right? It's a worker placement game. This is a hand management game. This is yada, yada, yada. Just everybody gets a basics.
This is a 4X.
This is a 4X.
Whatever,
yeah,
right?
just that's all.
Yeah.
Victory condition. Boom. Here's how you win. What ends the game? The clock. Then I like to go right into the anatomy of the components. I like to then instantly go, all right, here's the map. This is the 4 different countries over here. This right here is the temple track. All right, now let's look at our player board here. You've got your houses right here. This is a marker for this. I like everybody to know what everything is, right? Even if they don't understand how it all clicks, they all go like, oh, okay, it starts giving you some frame of reference.
Got it.
Then I like to go through a round. And usually by going through a round, you cover all the actions.
Yep.
Right. But I like to do it in the order of the round. Okay, this is the influence phase. This is where you collect your economy and you move into things. All right, then you get 3 actions on your turn. Here are all the possible actions. Let's go over the simplest one, building to the most complicated ones. Simplest action, move your worker. Okay, that costs 2 action points. Yada. So then we'll go through all the possible actions. Then I like to go through, like you said, very few exceptions and edge cases, but mostly ones that are traps. That you will hurt yourself if you don't remember.
Yes,
right?
This is an important thing to know,
because if you don't realize that you don't want to spend all your power uselessly in Gaia Project, you'll really hurt yourself, because yes, there is a way to spend it quickly, so in an emergency, but you'll be screwing yourself in the future.
In Dune, you want to fight, you want to win fights, but remember, you can only get 3 of your men back into your supply each turn.
Right.
So if you lose a lot of guys, it's going to take a long time for you to be back in fighting shape, right?
Totally.
That's one of those little things. Yeah.
And finally, I think it's very important to go over endgame scoring, even down to, okay, also, for every $5 you have at the end of the game, that's 1 point. I like to just quickly, and this is probably the least important thing, because what we're going to do is I'm going to just tell them all the end game scoring. Okay, we get victory points for this, victory points for this, victory points for this, and then you can convert your resources into victory points at 5-2.
Right.
I will say it once, but then halfway through the game, always, I will bring out, okay, now we're halfway through the game ends halfway. Let's go over the victory conditions again, guys. Let's go. Now that we all fully understand and grok the game, here's what is everything that's going to score. Because the worst thing is somebody gets to the end of the thing and goes, oh, I didn't realize that, money is so important and I spent it all, right?
Yeah.
And also tiebreakers too are also important. If this is a close game, if this is PAX Premier or, something with, very, very low scoring games or bust or whatever, like make sure people understand the tiebreakers.
Yeah. Yeah. And by the way, and saying what a typical winning score is something we say all the time.
Great point.
Right? In bus, we're like, guess what?
Yeah.
4 could win this game.
Yeah. That's actually, I would if you're writing these down or making a little list, I would always end with a typical score in this game is this. On your first game, expect to be happy with this.
Yeah. Yeah, Railroad Evolution. Getting over 200 points is probably key to winning the game.
Yeah.
Right, and that's kind of what you're looking for. So when you look at these things, that's at least some metric, some yardstick to assess it.
Exactly.
I would say that I would not go over scoring for people that are newer to the hobby. For newer to the hobby, I would leave that out until you get a little bit deeper into the game.
Yeah.
What I would do instead is I would say most victory points wins the game, and I would say here are the 3 areas that probably score the most victory points in the game.
Yep.
You're going to get a lot of points from this. In Underwater Cities, look at those cards that cost 3 points that are out there.
Yep.
There's going to be a lot of points for those, right? And let's figure out which one is going to fit with your style and make sure you get that one.
Totally.
Things along those lines. So teaching strategy number 1 is tell a story. I love, Matt and I, you were both writers. We love telling stories. When you can, the best way for a person to understand a new game is for them to be in the narrative of the game. For you to tell the story of the game, less by saying this happens, then that happens in a rules situation, but more, this is who you are, this is who you're playing, and this is what you're doing. Democker, we just did the other night, a perfect example of it. You are, and I don't talk about it in terms of the German parliamentary election system because it actually works perfectly well.
Sure.
As the
Primaries.
American presidential primary system. So I said at the beginning of the game, I said, which presidential candidate do you want to be, Matt? And Matt, who do you pick?
Well, oh geez, play this game. I chose Buttigieg because everybody hates Buttigieg. Right.
So
right.
he chose Buttigieg. Dimitri said, "I will be Bernie." And so each one of us picked that guy. So right off the bat, before any...
Or, no, there was a Warren and a Klobuchar or whatever.
I was Klobuchar.
Yeah, Klobuchar. So it wasn't
Absolutely.
all guys. Wasn't all guys.
No, we mixed it up. I didn't say that. What I'm saying is that we all picked somebody before I even went into explaining what the rules of the game are.
Yeah.
And then I said, so, okay, look at this board. This board represents the first 4 states we're going to be competing for. Okay. And then I flipped them all out. And when I got to Mecklenburg or whatever, I said, okay, that's kind of like New Jersey. That's like a decent state, but not a huge state. And then, oh, look, that's California. That's the one we're going for. That's got all of those delegates that we're going for, right? You want to get the most delegates. That's one of the big ways you win. And by telling the story that way, by explaining what we're doing that way, these little cubes that you have, these are your campaign workers. They're going out there and they're creating rallies and they're going door to door and they're doing all this sort of stuff. The more of these guys out there, the more votes you're going to be able to get. But you can't just get the votes just because you have those guys out there. You have to listen to what the issues that are in that state, and you have to match those issues. So by telling a story and by trying to relate everything to the metaphor of the game, it becomes way easier to follow an explanation. So that's one of the big things. You want to talk about number 2, which is concepts then details? Or do you want me to?
Yeah, you lead.
I'll do that
be
one.
Color commentary.
Sounds great. Teaching strategy number 2 is start with the concepts, then get into the details. Perfect example of this is Dune. The best way to teach Dune is to teach everything. Dune is one of those rare games where every single person plays a very different game than every other person. So teaching Dune, the best way to teach Dune is to first teach what is common to everybody. Mm-hmm. What are the parts of the game that almost everybody is going to be playing exactly the same way?
Right. So a really good example of that also is Root as well, which is a game probably a lot of the listeners have played a lot. I always, when I teach Root, I always go, here's how everyone gets victory points. By taking cardboard pieces off the board or by building items. That's it. Everyone scores points like that. Doesn't matter who you are. But everybody else has their own secret way of getting some points.
Correct. And for most people, you're going to build up armies in these areas. You're going to move this way. Here's how moving works on the board.
Exactly.
Here's how building things works on the board. Then you get into the details. Then you go into you are the Woodland Alliance. This is how your game is different.
It's almost a different beast teaching asymmetrical games because that gets into a different area of like, all right, you guys go do something else. I'm going to tell this person how to play their game. Listen if you want, but you might be overwhelmed.
Sure. But listen, Teaching Gaia Project is the same situation. Teaching
Yeah,
Eclipse
except
is the same
those- yeah.
situation. It's the degree to which the play is completely different
Yeah.
that matters. But there's a lot of games that play that way. I'll say that another good example of that is Marco Polo.
Yep.
Playing Marco Polo, 80% of the teach is teaching the game that is exactly the same for everybody. And then the last 20% of the teach is my favorite. Marco Polo may be my favorite game to teach.
Yeah.
Because I've explained everything about how to play the game.
Right.
Everybody thinks they get it.
And everybody's like, this is okay.
Yeah. And then I bring out the 8 characters.
Yeah.
And I have a particular order I always do.
Yeah.
And the order is from the guy that you think is pretty great to the guy that you think is awesome to the person that you think is completely overpowered, and how is that allowed to be in there?
Yeah.
And then I still have 5 more people that are each consecutively like, how, and to the point where people are like, their minds are just being blown, and you can see them almost screaming at how on earth could that be a character in this game? How could that work? Which is interesting. Play the teaching round. This is so important for my wife, for any kinesthetic learner.
Yeah.
There are people that when you teach, they are going to seem to sort of zone out. They're going to seem to just sort of lose it. And as they play the game, in the actual game, you might get frustrated. You might be like, we have a friend, Scott, who is very much a kinesthetic learner. And he'll ask questions that everyone else is like, didn't you hear? He said that. He's like, no, he couldn't process that now.
Yeah.
But now he's ready to, because he's actually playing the game.
Now, here's something that we do in our group a lot that I'd be curious to know if other groups do this. We will often start a game over in our group. And that is not verboten in our group. That is not something that's looked down upon. We do it a lot. And especially if it's a new game. Now, usually if anybody raises it after a round, and if somebody often will just go, you guys, I would really like to start this over. Now, clearly it depends on what time it is and how long the game is and everything and how everybody feels. But very often, and Trey's really good about this, Trey will often be the person who goes, I have no problem starting this over if you guys want to, now that we all understand it.
Yeah.
And usually people will go, it's 8:30. Sure, we got time. Let's start over. I really recommend people do that in any game they can. It's never going to be bad.
If you have at least one kinesthetic learner in your group, I recommend you say that. You say that we're going to play one round of this game.
But even if you don't say it, we often don't say it. And then just at the end of a round or 30 minutes into the game, we'll often go, people will be laughing going like, well, I just understood the game and wow, would I have played it different? The minute someone says that in our group, somebody will usually go, do you want to? Is anybody have a problem with that? And mostly people just go, no, that sounds good. Let's all start over, because I'm excited to start over because I also learned a few things that round.
That the acceptance of that tends to be based around how long a round is.
Sure, and how late in the night the teach started, and if we played fillers before and all that. But if that's something that doesn't exist in your game group, consider adding it to your repertoire of things that are just totally socially acceptable to do. To just say, you know what, guys? Anybody mind? I know we're only 30 minutes into the game. Would anybody mind if we started over? Because I just figured out how to play the game, and I'm super excited. I don't want to wait 6 weeks to play this again. I want to play it right now, knowing what I know.
There's a game called Eclipse that we play a lot, which is a great space dice chucker,
4X,
fun 4X game. We've played it before in such a way that there are 2 sides to every board. One side is the Terrans, and they all play identical. And then the other side are the special powers. I've played this game with people that are newer to the hobby, and what we did was we did a first round of the game, which was a teaching round, where we basically learn the game as we play, where we all played Terrans. So we all played under the same circumstances. After playing that round and everybody understood what the game was, we reset, we flipped the boards over, and then the last part of the teach was explaining what their individual powers were. And then we were ready to go.
New edition, by the way, could arrive any day. No.
I've heard it. Yes, I know.
No. We have confirmation that it left China over 6 weeks ago. I mean, it could be arriving any day.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
I'm really hopeful that we've been waiting a long time for this. Let me tell you about Tichu real quick. Tichu is a game that is perfect for teaching rounds. I'm going to give you, if you have never played Tichu, you must play Tichu. It's amazing.
It's Euro Bridge.
It is the perfect couples game. It is phenomenal. The way to teach Tichu is the first thing you do is you take out the 4 special cards. There are 4 special cards that are different than the normal cards in the game. Set them aside. the first round, all you do is you show people I could play a single. And if I play a single, people have to play a single on top of it. I could play a pair. People have to play a pair on top of it. Go through all the combinations.
Yeah, trick taking.
And then play one round. We're just taking tricks.
Yeah.
Okay. Second round, we still play with just these cards, but now you introduce the idea of Tichu and Grand Tichu. You introduce the idea of I could look at my cards and before I play my first card, bet 100 points that I'm going to be the first person out of cards.
The most fun part of the game.
Right? Do that. Then for the third round of the third teaching round, you explain the 4 special cards, shuffle them in, and I have never failed to, even with people that are very adverse to gaming, very adverse to a lot of rules explanations, I've never seen anybody have a problem with learning Tichu and being able to play very, very effectively in a relatively short time by playing just 3 rounds of a game in which each round I'm adding in one more wrinkle to how the game is played.
Yep.
It's like the frog that's sitting in the water, and I'm just slowly heating it up.
Yep.
It works really well. Crafting a bite-sized strategy guide is pretty good in terms of design. Well, what Matt was talking about what telling people how to win, how to play the game, what scores points. There are some games where it works really well to tell people, all right, pretty much in this game, there are 3 paths to victory. You're going to have to choose one of these. For new gamers that are playing a game for the first time, that is a key piece of information to get on. So if you can spend just like 3-4 minutes sort of giving them, like, I would even talk in a lower voice, like, all right. Now I've explained to you how to play the game. Here's how to win the game. This is what you want to do. Puerto Rico is a great example of that, right? Andreas Seyfarth, you say, look, you can win the game by building the best buildings in the city. You do a city building strategy. Just focus on that and crush that. You could do a shipping strategy. If that's happening, you got to get a lot of corn because you want to ship those cheap things that you can make a lot of, right? Corn and indigo, that's what you're going to do. Every other strategy in the game is some combination of those two. So figure out which one of those 2 strategies you seem to be lined up for and go for that. And just talk a little bit about how to start down the road of that strategy, right? I think that's a really good way to get things going. I think for people, when they start getting lost in a game explanation, one of the things that helps them focus and helps them have a productive first game is to give them an idea of lots of people win doing A or doing B.
Right. Viable strategies.
Exactly. And they can wrap their heads around that. Teaching strategy number 5 is highlight the important things. Like sometimes we try to explain all the rules of the game, and in doing so, the people listening to this and trying to figure out how to play the game cannot separate the wheat from the chaff.
Yeah, don't get bogged down in the details. And if there's a lot of details, this comes down to an important rule. Make sure people understand if the game is very complicated, this is a teaching game.
Correct.
Now, teaching games are games with asterisks. They must be games that everybody there has to have a certain mindset when you're playing a teaching game. And this can be tough if you have very competitive players in your group because A, they might be frustrated by their lack of strength at the game, at how they're not going to play strategically. Some people really hate that feeling of being, behind the 8 ball. They don't like that feeling of I'm not as good at this as other people. And that's instantly a frustrating, bad, negative experience for me.
Yeah.
Make sure that they,
I always say, if I just taught you a game, if I win, it doesn't count.
Yeah.
If I lose, it totally counts.
Right. But make sure that, everybody's down. Everyone needs to be down for the learning game. So don't have players who have played it 50 times who don't want to sit there for a learning game because they might I don't want to play a learning game. I want to play for real. Okay, then you should play something else tonight, or we should all play something else tonight because this needs to be a learning game and these people need to feel safe to lose.
Yes.
This is a safe space to lose and feel good about what the victory here is learning the game.
Yes.
And
in highlighting the important things, sometimes there's something about the game that the rules explanation, that nothing in the rules says this is an important thing to know, but there's something important to know. In Shogun or Wallenstein, they're both the same game. They're just different settings. The important thing to know is it's going to feel like you're playing a war game, but it's not really a war game. You are going to barely be able to move an army 3 or 4 spaces over the course of the entire game.
Yep.
So remember that. Remember that where you start, you're never going to get too far from where you start.
Right.
Focus on that. And Ora and Labora is another great example. What Elder was saying about Ora and Labora when we did the review the week before, he said that settlements, the settlement strategy, building settlements and building good buildings around those settlements has more bang for the buck in terms of victory points than anything else. There's a lot of ways to get victory points in Ora and Labora. Never ignore this one thing. Make sure you do this. And being able to say just a couple little things like that to highlight the important things is really, really key.
I agree. On a side note, in terms of the opposite of important things, which are strong details, I will often tell people in an extremely complicated game, a game like you said with a lot of chrome in it, I will often say, you will all reach a point tonight where you look me in the eye and say, why didn't you teach me that little rule? And I'm not going to teach it to you now, because if I taught you all of those little rules, this would be a horrible teach and you'd forget all the big important things. Yeah. So just know I will do my best to tell you the tiny little detail if I see it coming as a train coming down the road about to hit us, but I can't tell you all the tiny little edge cases because this game's full of them. You're just going to have to learn by tripping over them.
Yeah, and then let's talk about that for a second. You bring up an interesting issue that we didn't even talk about, which is what is your responsibility as a person who is learning a game?
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes we need to point out that the person that is teaching you the game is doing a mitzvah. It is a kindness that they are doing. They are doing their best to get you into something and excited about something. Do your best to not have an adversarial relationship with the person that is teaching you a game. We have that sometimes that happens in our group. People get kind of hostile about or frustrated about the way the game is being taught. We have
a phrase in our group that is often said in a joking tone, but with slightly seriousness. Not how I was taught.
That's not the way I was taught. That's right.
Now that's something people say in our group a lot as a joke, which is usually when something has happened to them where they didn't realize something that has now hurt their game state. Like, I didn't know we could do that, or I thought we couldn't do that. And then we have a thing where it's like, you're blaming the teacher a little bit. But but you have to keep in mind that sometimes in a learning game, the teacher isn't going to teach you every little thing.
Yes.
Because this is a learning game. And you need to turn that, what's the Magic the Gathering character that needs to win? Timmy, is that whatever the one that, all that matters is min-maxing, right? Yes. Min-maxers have a hard time, and Jesse is a min-maxer. Jesse has a hard time with the teaching game sometimes. I think we all do sometimes, but I've noticed it with Jesse where it's like he wants to play well every time he plays. And like he's definitely very good at the teaching game now. But I do remember at a time where it was like, I would be like, Jesse, it's a teaching game. Let's really let's not care who wins at all, Yeah. I feel like he fully gets it now, but I do remember there was a time when everybody's had that moment.
There are people that come to game night that don't come often, that are much more that way than Jesse. I think Jesse's got a lot better over the years in terms of this.
But he's a competitive player. Anybody who has that competitive spirit in them, even if it's their first game, they want to win.
100%, and it's understandable and 100% natural. What we do say is, and I've said this, I've never said this to Jesse, but I've said this to other people that sometimes I see them getting very, very frustrated in terms of the way the game was taught.
Ben Hoyt is like that too. Ben Hoyt really likes winning, and he doesn't like the feeling of losing. And sometimes when I really have to say to him, like, you're going to lose this game before we even started because we've all played it before and you haven't. I really hope, though, that if you get anything from this game, it's a passion to play it again.
And what I like to say to people in these situations is, look, teaching game is an act of generosity. And an active,
be nice to your teachers.
Right. So try and be as generous going back the other way.
And I'm going to do a little thing after we get through these. I'm going to talk about how I learn a game to teach it. And I hope that through understanding that, you understand the amount of work and effort that goes into every teach that you are given as a gamer.
Let me give out one more teaching strategy, which I think works very well. Visual learners. We talked about that at the top. The V in VARC is visual learners. Taking a stroll down the player aid. If there's a good player aid available, print one out from the Geek. If there's not, the great thing about the Geek is that there's a good player aid for almost everything.
Yep.
Print it out, have it for the visual learners, and go down it step by step. Food Chain Magnate has an amazing player aid. I could open that menu up. First of all, it's gorgeous looking menu. The front page of it goes over the steps of each round. You open it up and you see all of the cards and you see the flow chart of the corporations. It looks fantastic. I can't wait to stare at that and see how things go together. Going down the flow chart so that the visual learners are getting what they need. The auditory learners are getting what they need. Both of them are being dealt with at the exact same time. If you can continually refer to that player aid, people will basically know where to go to look up that information. Yep. So I think that's a really key thing as well.
And I will get into that when I talk about how to get better at teaching games as well. But an important thing that I do with almost every game is to reteach yourself a game every time before you play it if you're going to be teaching it and you haven't taught it in a while.
Yep.
And the best way to do that is to go to the Geek and print out every game. Somebody has been generous with their time and put together a condensed rules version.
The rules summary is
in a one page. Print that sucker out. Even if you've never played the game before, go to BGG, print it out, and put it in there with the rules. And the next time that you want to teach it, you're not going to have to read the whole rule book. You'll have to read 1 or 2 pages.
Yep. Done. Tough teaches, right? We just talked about Oath.
Ugh. What's your least favorite game to teach?
It probably is On Mars. On Mars,
Of
baby.
all the games in the world.
No. Okay, my actual hardest game to teach is Here I Stand.
Okay.
Here I Stand is an absolute beast. It is 7 players. Each one is playing a highly asymmetric game, which is completely different, that has a very specific historical context.
Yeah.
There's a religious war, there's a physical war going on, and those people have totally different rule sets to play. That's the hardest of anything. Out of the games that I don't normally think of as being particularly hard to teach, I think Brass is a surprisingly tough teach.
It is. It's a horrible teach.
Yeah. I think it's a tough one.
The connections just are so hard, and then understanding what's going to happen when the boats disappear, when the canals disappear.
Yeah,
nobody can nobody can prepare for that until they've played.
I think you can teach. I think you could teach the rules of the game fairly easily. I don't think it's that hard, but to properly get across how to play the game is a really, really tricky thing because it's not quite so evident. And Twilight Struggle has got some
because of the cards. Yeah.
Well, no, it's not even the cards. It's what it is. This is what domination is, and this is how it's different than
I found
presence.
that game kind of easy to teach.
The difference between a coup and a realignment.
Oh, yeah, that's just like you've got the charts, you got the player rates, but yeah, those are things you're just not gonna. You're gonna have to look at the chart a lot your first game until you memorize it.
Yeah, exactly right. What about you?
My least favorite teach of all time is probably Fire in the Lake. It's a horrible
coin
teach.
Games are tough.
Horrible teaches. PAX Renaissance is just a horrible teach because it's a game that you can teach the mechanics, but it's like Brass. You cannot teach the why of you're doing anything, and you just have to tell people, here's what you're going to do for the next hour and a half. Just try the actions that I gave you without understanding why you're doing them. And maybe at the end of an hour and a half you will have figured out why you did any of that or what you would do next time that would make those actions make sense, because I don't necessarily think anybody can really understand the why of their actions. The actions themselves are super easy. Draw a card, pay the money.
But how does that work, right?
Why the hell are you doing it?
Why are you doing it?
For these nebulous victory conditions that don't even exist yet, that you can't even fathom what they mean.
Or a corollary to that is I know I have to do blank.
Yeah.
But how do I get there from here? Like what that I'm doing now in any way or shape or form is going to get me closer to that.
Here's a funny teach.
I'll say I felt a little bit about Oath. Oath is a little bit like that in some ways.
Oath is a rough teach. Yeah, I don't enjoy that teach. My favorite game of all time, Trois, is famously a tricky teach for people because that multiplication of action times dice is very confusing for people. You can do the action this many times based on the pip number of the dice, and then it's usually then divided by this number in order to attack the things that are coming. There's weird
using the city cards.
There's weird math you have to do, and people just instantly glaze over when you start going multiply by this, then divide it by this, and they're just like, I'm out.
I feel like because that genre has become more acceptable, I think it's become easier over time because we have more examples of it. But yeah, it is.
That's a game that I've taught it to many people, and they just go, I hate this game before we even started playing. Just the teachers burned their.
So let's
their
go to
brain.
the opposite side of that. The opposite side of that is the elegant game. And when I say elegant game, elegant to me is the easy teach
Concordia.
with the deep game.
Concordia is an easy teach.
You know what? It is and it isn't.
I think it's so easy.
It's easy to teach how to play the game, but to know how
sure.
to know how to do to be able to play it well is super hard to get that across.
All right.
But I totally agree. I think it is easy teach because you just go through the cards in your hand.
Here's the 8 cards. That's the game.
That's the game. Yeah.
Play a card. Do one of the things
Agreed.
I just explained.
To me, there is no easier teach to deeper game ratio than Friedrich.
Sure. Yeah.
The rules for Friedrich are on a playing card.
Yep.
Everybody has a playing card. It shows you everything you need to know to play the game, and yet the game is like crazy deep. El Grande is another one that is such an amazing game, and yet probably 5 minutes, 10 minutes to teach the whole thing.
Yeah, it's pretty quick.
That's about all it takes, which is really kind of
Castles
amazing.
of Burgundy is pretty simple teach too.
That's a pretty good one. Yeah.
You've got
good.
2 dice. Here's the things each die can do.
Yeah.
Have fun.
And there's an ocean to explore there.
Yeah,
with
exactly.
that.
Yeah. Dice can be used to buy or to place or to sell. That's it.
All right. Tell me how you learn a game. Tell me what helps you.
All right. So I wrote down a couple different steps here of how I learn every game. And at this point now, I buy a lot of games, and I am just as good at learning how to learn the game than I am at teaching it. I feel like. So the first thing I do is organizing the game is the first step of learning the game. Punching the game and figuring out where components go, which baggies they go in, and which ones go together is step number 1 in understanding the game. These are not just rule books. These are games with physical components. And as much as you read the rule book and grok it, you will never fully grok it until you've seen all the pieces and understood how they line up. Whenever I buy a game, first thing I do is if I've never played it before, I unpackage the game, I put it down on my table with the rule book, and I go over the components as I punch them out, and I try to understand what each component is.
Now, you have a clean room for this purpose. Do you recommend other people have a clean room and use the filtration mask, exactly. The gloves? And do you sleeve every component as you pull it out of the box?
Yeah, completely naked, just to make sure in case you lose a piece so you can see where everything is at all times.
Absolutely. Super important.
Yeah, so bright that it burns your corneas.
That's key.
Yeah.
That's key.
Yeah. So organizing
video in the corner.
Organizing the game is step 1 to learning it. Then read the rule book and or watch a video. Depending on my how rushed I am, if I have a game night that night and I'm trying to learn a game, I will watch a video. I think we've gone over all of our favorite board game reviewers and explainers, but BGG has added a nice little tab in their video section called instructional.
You know, I don't think we've given enough credit to Shut Up and Sit Down. I think they are so great at
Their teachers are great.
at doing a teach that is both fun and substantive.
Yeah.
I think they do an amazing job. We also talk about No Pun Included. We've talked about them many times in the past. I think Quinn's and company deserve a little bit of praise from us because they're fantastic. Go ahead.
I will watch a rules video. I will watch it at 1.5 or 2.0 speed. And I will watch the video very quickly, on chipmunk mode, and try to grok it really quickly from that. I'll usually stop before the game is played. I'll just watch the teach. If it's heavy cardboard or if it's gaming rules or whatever it is, I'll just watch the teach, usually at double speed. Then I'll go and read the rule book. I read rule books before I go to bed at night. I have a stack of rule books by my bedside. I read rule books at night before I go to bed. It's up to you if you want to do that. It's what I do. It's how I relax. It's my favorite thing to do at night. I genuinely look forward to it the way some people look forward to waking up and having a cup of coffee.
I watch the videos on my phone at the gym on the treadmill.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
That's what I do.
So it is organizing the game is the first step of learning it, watching a video, reading the rules, and the last step is I will always try to set the game up on my table, do a full setup for 2 or 3 players, and play one entire round with 2 or 3 dummy hands. I will always try to do that for a game. By that point, I know the game very well. I could teach it very well at that point. And I really that's my ideal learning situation. You can't always have time for all of that. And sometimes the game is simple enough where you don't need to do that. But for On Mars, that's what I did. For really complicated games, I do all those steps. I will set it up on my table. And by the way, the setup of a game is a huge part of learning how to play the game.
Oh, yeah. The spatial putting things in the right place.
That's right.
Knowing what the term is for this versus that.
Go through the entire setup by yourself before your game night and see how it all lays out, what it's supposed to look like, and then play one dummy round. I guarantee you, even if you've read the rulebook and watched a video and you feel like, I got this, halfway through the first round of that game, you will go, oh man, I'm glad I did this because I did not get half of this game. Actually moving the pieces, going through a whole round, going through all the actions, it's the only way you can guarantee you actually know how to teach it. I will also say this. Now, I think the reason Tom and I both love teaching games, and I genuinely love teaching games. Mm-hmm. I genuinely love it. It's not I put up with it so I can play them. I love it. I would also say if you do not love teaching games, I don't think you should teach games.
No. Now, teach games if you have to.
I don't love all teaches. Like we've said, there are games we do not enjoy teaching, but I love teaching games. I get excited to do it. I think it's because the mechanics of it are the exact same mechanics of my job, but without the creative drain. It is just the mechanics of my job being take something that is in my head, that is fully formed in my head, and put it in your head using only the power of my language. That's my job. That's what I do.
That's what we do.
That's all my job is. Take something in my head that only I can see and using only the power of my words, put it in your head exactly how I see it. And that is what teaching a game is. If you don't love that process, if that doesn't become a game in and of itself, then I think you'll find game teaching to be exhaustive. To me, it actually has made me a better writer. It's made me, in the same way that, they say, if you want to be a novelist, go write for a newspaper for 10 years. And you will learn the economy of writing. You will learn how to say what you want to say in the least amount of words possible and the most important, in the best way you can say it. I think learning how to teach a game does the same thing. I mean, it really has shaped the way that I look at structuring scenes and the way and just getting information.
Expo scenes become a lot
absolutely.
clearer.
Just getting information across. I feel I've gotten so good at just getting information across into somebody's brains in a way that works for them.
I think for me, I'm just going to say there's something only slightly different, which is my evangelistic impulses that I have are stymied and stifled in screenwriting a lot, right? Producers spend a lot of time pulling messages out of things that I write sometimes, for one reason or another, that becoming an evangelist for games, part of my zeal and interest in teaching games is I know something amazing and I want to share it with you.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to share it with you and to bring you in here. And it's going to be a little tricky. It's going to be a little difficult, but trust me, when you get to the other side of it, it's going to be amazing. And I love that. And that's something that in my writing career so far is something that is something I always try to do, but is often stymied.
Yeah.
Thwarted.
Totally. Just as we said to have some compassion and understanding for and respect for your game teachers, as a game teacher, have respect for the people who have driven to your house and are putting themselves in your hands and want to learn a game. Prepare before every game night.
Yep.
Figure out what you're going to be playing that night, even if it could be a couple different things, and just pull out the rule books of all those books the day before and just skim through them. Make sure that you remember the stuff. Make sure that you can, just can I reteach this? No. And that's when those condensed rules files on BGG become very useful.
Oh yeah.
Just go over the day before. Don't do it. Don't pull out the box and then go, all right, guys, let me just look through the rules real quick and remember how to play this. Don't do that. Don't waste people's time.
Be ready. The example that I used at Essen.
Don't do what I did with that Madeira game that one time. Don't do that. Don't break out in a cold sweat and go, I forgot everything.
Don't do what I did in Wir sind das Volk. Playing a game at a convention when you've literally just learned it is a painful experience for me. I go through it, I get through it, but it's something I hate to do. And I think that too often we fall into a situation where we end up doing that. And it's not great for the teacher. It's not great for the learners. It's not great for anybody.
Yeah.
Avoid it when you can.
Tom and I put a ton of work into teaching games. We put an absurd amount of energy and effort into it, and we don't do it because we want to be thanked. We do it because we love learning games. So if that is something that you naturally want to do, you should be the game teacher in your world.
We need more.
We need more. And if you are not a game teacher and don't enjoy it, and you hate parsing that information out and figuring out how to explain it to others, don't do it. Yeah. You will probably deter more people from the hobby than create more.
Yeah. Buy games for the person that will teach them.
Yeah.
Bring snacks.
Yes.
Bring a positive and sunny disposition,
Yeah.
and and encourage the people that will do the teach.
And and look, I always say, guys, this one's a beast.
Yeah.
Phones down and pay attention, and tell me right now if you're not down for this. This is 4 hours with a 1 hour teach, and it's heavy as balls. If you're out, say it now.
Why'd you say phones down? Why'd you have to bring that up? Why'd you have to bring that up?
Don't look at your phone when people are teaching you.
Because I want to talk about that, but I don't want to sound like an old fogey. And yet,
well, it's rude. I mean, just say like, it's okay if look, it happens
in our current game makeup. Who is the person most likely to be the person with their phone up?
Alfred. Oh, but
he's not here.
Current.
He's not here.
But Alfred also usually has already played the games. So if you've already played the games, it's fine. Look at your phone. Go leave if you go get a sandwich.
Alfred's in Boston. So who is it now?
I don't know. It's me. Probably.
Yes, it is you.
Yeah, but I'm very rarely being taught a game, so it's fine. I wouldn't do it during a teach.
You've done it during a teach?
Because I probably read the rules already.
You're a bad influence on others.
Maybe,
all right?
Maybe.
Any last points you got?
No, that's it. Like, just, be nice to your teachers. Think about that, all the steps I just told you, the amount of hours it takes to learn one game. And next time you show up to a game night and somebody's teaching you a game, realize they put in all of that effort for you. And for them, it's selfish. They love it probably. But, respect that and give them the attention. And, look, the ideal player for me is somebody who watched the rules the night before and knows 75% of it and just goes, give me just a quick refresh. I love that.
Which for the tough games, that's one thing I definitely do. Yeah. I had made sure that for 1862 that everyone had watched the video, that had read the rule book, so that going in, the teach wouldn't be so bad.
Yeah.
And it still needed the teach because it's a
I don't think that's a relevant point I don't think that's a useful tip for people, though, is tell your gamers to learn the game, because everybody learns in different ways.
Sure.
Get really good at teaching, and then you won't need that.
But it is true that in some edge cases, in some particularly difficult games, sometimes getting people, when they come to game night, to have a little bit of, and by the way, there are people out there that are going to come to your game night that would love to have heads up as to what we're going to play, so that they can do their own little education.
Trey is like that. Trey always prefers to know in advance. He would love to read the rules the night before for a complicated game. He's super into that.
Which is fantastic. Why not?
Paul
give that
does
to
that
them?
all the
Help them
time.
do
What are
that.
we playing tonight? I have time to watch a video. He'll text me. He'll just say, what are we playing tonight? I have an hour or so to watch a video. Let me know.
Maddie, I love chatting with you.
Hey, if you enjoyed that video, you very well might enjoy the other videos you now see being suggested to you on screen. Also, we'd greatly appreciate it if you could like, share, or subscribe to our Game Brain channel. Thanks so much.